and we're going to do stuff and things.
Stuff and things and stuff and things.
We're back live.
Hey there, everyone.
Look,
Yeah, we're here.
We're
here for you guys.
I'm a genius.
So true.
I'm so smart. I mean, it's crazy. And we got chat. I'm going to like this video. I'm the only person watching it because of the fact that we had nobody. Everybody was at the other.
This is where we get to apologize.
Yay!
Okay. Well,
Okay, so as we were going to say, and there will be no video evidence of anything else. Also, Tom, is there any way you could get your phone the fuck out of the way of your camera so we don't just see just your phone? Tom,
My work never stops.
Exactly. And he goes, look out, War Games Live. The DOG stream technical capabilities are excellent.
it's true.
Oh, Corey, shots fired. Dollar store, art of war. Ooh.
Ouch, bro.
That's hurtful.
Come on.
Corey, do you remember what I did to you at the team tournament? Do you want that to happen every time we play? You
Unfortunately,
better shut your mouth.
I mean, unfortunately, you're threatening somebody completely different because that's Corey Gulch, who wasn't at the team tournament.
All right.
So
Well,
Corey's sitting at his house right now, wondering why you're shit talking him and threatening his life.
I mean, that wasn't threatening his life. That was threatening his model's life. That's a completely different thing.
All of
Unless-
the things, some of the
Unless
stuff.
your models are like your children, some weird thing like that, like me. I don't know.
Just letting you know that we will definitely be deleting that goof up.
I'll go in and edit stuff. It happens when you have two people messing with YouTube. We're trying to get our channel like more updated, and a lot of our artwork didn't come in. That's going to be in probably in about an hour, which is too late to use.
the Manchester Insulting platform is back. Indeed. I'm not saying anyone sucks. I'm just saying it's you guys. God damn
All right,
it.
so we were going to talk about Warzone Atlanta.
We definitely were.
The Tyrannage showed up to win yet another major.
Two majors this weekend. But Atlanta is the first one we're gonna talk about.
Atlanta's the first one we're going to talk about. Then we're going to talk about some other guy that got bit by the Tyrannid bug and
It's not
decided
my
to try
fault.
him out.
It's not my fault. This is your fault. So your fault.
It's 100% my fault. But anyway, so Warzone Atlanta, Kraken won. So let's.
You know what? I don't even want to start with that. You know what I want to start with? I got two things I'm going to start with. First off, we ought to give props for our boy Brenton, who did fucking well at that tournament, rocked it out. Second thing is, I have to give props to the Brown Magic, Nick Nadavati, because his list was hot dumpster fire. I don't understand what was going on there. As an Eldar player, he had very little damage and managed to win a crap ton of games with, I actually think, might have been magical spells.
I mean, you can definitely speak to the veracity of your statement, considering, if I remember correctly, someone took double Mawlock to a tournament not so long ago.
Bro, if you're going to get correct on that, I went double Mawlock. Where's Tom?
Tom just vanished.
I'm taking a work call. Give me 1 second, guys. Keep going.
But I have... But just leave your background there. Double Mawlock, Toxicrid, 0 Tyrant Guard for me to fly back into.
Oh, yeah.
I was playing a little bit handicapped.
Love it when a plan comes together.
It did. It came together great.
It
I
did.
love
Yeah.
every second of it.
Yes.
But yeah, so definitely an interesting event. A whole bunch of lists that I was not expecting to do well. So
It rocked out. I mean, it had the Eldar trickery. I mean, it wasn't, and I'm giving him crap about it. It wasn't like it was a complete dumpster fire, but it had a lack of damage in it, and he really had to use a lot of trickery, and he did very well. I have to give him props on
He
that.
had 2 units of Howling Banshees, which are, nothing to
Well, he had 2
joke.
Banshees and a Striking Scorpion, but he only had 1 Dire Avenger. He had 3 Farseers, 2 Warlock. He had a lot of points in characters. But then he had 2 units of Hawks, which he used his entire craft world attributes to use them, which was the count of stationary so he could advance and then shoot and then still pop back. And he weirdly brought 2 units of 9 instead of 2 units of 10. I feel like it was just a mess with Jack and I when we looked at the list and would go, why? And I'm like, I think this is just a mind game.
A shell game, if you will.
It was.
And with the terrain that they had and the player place terrain, the way they had it, I could see where this would do well. There was,
the thing is, man, it was. I don't think enough people. I didn't get to check it out enough. I peeked into a couple streams. Nurgle Matt was watching it. Shout out to Nurgle Matt. He took me to the event this weekend. Boss mode. We had awesome convos.
Nice.
But I was checking out a couple of them, and I think that the Warzones, the way they do terrain is so different that people didn't realize how aggressive you could be with just making your opponent's zone a dumpster fire of awful. Like we don't even play, a lot of people don't even play that much player place terrain anyways. Warzone Atlanta was basically you chose sides and then you started going back and forth with terrain, but you could put terrain in your opponent's side. So you could just make theirs a disaster if you got first drop on that. I don't know if people were aggressive enough in that because nobody else does that, so they just weren't used to it.
Well, didn't they also have the thing where at the end of the terrain placement, you could take out a ruin and put in your fortification?
Yes, and it wasn't, I'm pretty sure it was still not based on your side, so you could literally wreck your opponent's side by slamming. You're like, here's my spore assist, remove your piece of terrain.
And Nick's list had the webway gate in there, which is boop. You created your fire base. You created your hiding zone. Here's a webway gate.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And you displaced a piece. And that's just a big deal on that, man. You could use that so aggressively. And I was talking to, I talked to a couple of people that were going there that wanted to bring things like Spore Assist and a couple other things and just didn't because they didn't want to have feel bad moments where you're just like, hey, here's my Spore Assist. See you later. You're blocking terrain. Oh, look, there you are. So...
Warzone has always had interesting rules, terrain, just nuances to their events that make it different. Just like, Du Bois has very interesting terrain as well. It's kind of one of their signatures. More oftentimes, though, Atlanta has had shitty terrain, which has made for some very questionable tournaments in previous years, but I don't find that this one was incredibly egregious. It just made you change your list than how you normally would play it, because I know most Tyranid players, Sportsist, are really, really strong. So being able to take one and put it in player-based terrain is very, very strong. But yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is man, if I'm playing an army like against something like any of the T3 armies, any of the Elf armies, if I can just pick up a piece of my opponent's terrain, and I'll swap I'll swap my Spore Assist for you just standing there. That's huge.
Yeah, it should have been your terrain. I don't know why they were just like, meh.
I think it was just crazy on that. It's just one of those things because multiple of the fortifications say just 12 inches away from, more than 12 inches away from anybody else. I think that the webway gate is on your side, I'm pretty sure it says, but I don't think the Spore Assist says that, and a couple of the other ones don't say that. Who knows?
Spore Assist has basically forward deploy.
Yeah. And the thing is,
I think it has to be 12 inches from your opponent.
12 inches from your opponent. Yeah, I know this. I know the Spore Assist has that. So it's a big deal on that. It was huge on that. Corey, I don't remember which tournament I saw, but they switched between GW player place and a set terrain based on mission each run. I don't know that one. Tell you the truth, somebody else said that to me, and I didn't know what turn it was.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like any tournament I've been to.
You know what, Kevin, you're getting shanked. You're getting stabbed. I'm gonna make you drink bad beer, and you're definitely drinking wine with me. Talking crap about Ohio State.
So it was an interesting event, which, obviously had some interesting results.
And John Little won with his Kraken Tyranids, put up a smashing performance. He really wrecked through that tournament. did well. Tyranids, I mean, Kraken Tyranids is super strong. Yeah, I mean, well, Tyranids period is super strong, to be honest. So,
I mean, they didn't, although they limited the Tyrant with the Reaper, they didn't nerf him enough to where he became ineffective.
well, that doesn't even matter, man.
Yeah.
The mortal wounds were overkill half the time, anyways. So the overrun's just the problem. I think everybody knows that. Just make overrun core. There you go. That stops so much of that guy. I mean, I played him over the weekend, and the fact that I literally had him backflipping every single time he attacks is just so crazy. Yeah, and the mortal wounds are just nuts.
I completely understand.
Well, it's crazy, the mortal wound up. I mean, like, I went into a chaos player, put his terminators up, and he had a screen, and I was able to, through my mortal wounds, go through 10 cultists and 7 terminators. It's just crazy, you know. That you're like, here's 9 from the Zoes, here's another 8 from the Zoes, here's Neuroparasite, picks up 2/3 of the squad, you know, of the cultists, and then you just go, here's another smite, here's an extra psychic power, you know, where you're just like, you can just put down huge. I agree here with Eloise on this one. She goes, player place terrain is so advantageous to people with more experience. There's no leveling of plague field. Some games are lost before they start. 1,000%.
100, yeah.
You can literally, I say that you can't deploy, I say this just with deployment period, but it really applies for terrain also. You can't deploy to win, but you can deploy not to lose. And if you don't know how to do that and you don't have experience, there's a ton of games where I've looked at my opponent's terrain and just went, oh, I have a huge advantage. I'm probably just going to win this game now because of how we started the game.
Yep. So,
yeah, it's very important to understand that there is a fundamental difference than going to a table and just going, the TO has set my terrain, or hey, I should know how to set terrain. Now, for anyone who doesn't really know how to set terrain, we might have done a video on this.
Yeah, the truth.
And talked about this.
Yep.
But it is important to note that like everyone's been saying, and I think that it's very good that everyone knows that there is an issue with player-based terrain. Now, the next step is basically learning how to fix that, right? Learning how to deal with the, inefficiencies that you have with player-based terrain.
How do you guys feel about that? Or do we still need player-based terrain until every table and every tournament is basically up to snuff? Because I think one of the reasons that we started with player-based terrain is with player-based terrain, you can make subpar terrain usable, at least. You know what I mean?
I can answer this one because and again, I take some fault in suggesting player-placed terrain. Player-placed terrain was designed around, hey, these tables are not sufficient enough for this edition of the game early on in this edition. And it gave TOs an out to save a little bit of dollars and make terrain that they currently have work while they upgraded tables slowly. The problem with player-placed terrain is if you don't give all the terrain very specifically, this has X, Y, and Z. This piece has X, Y, and Z. And you didn't make that clear in your player pack and didn't make sure your players knew it, it could be very problematic for the unskilled players when they go, oh, I thought that hill was just a hill. I didn't realize it had obscuring and, this and that, because that caused a gap. I watched it happen at LVO last year. I saw it happen at ACO this year. I've seen it happen at another event that I went to that used player placed. That's something that's partially on the player's fault for not reading the player packet, which I know there's at least 2 people here who don't read them most of the time.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Potentially 3 or 4. But
you find
it's one of the things
you find that stuff out in the middle, baby. It's just like,
I mean, you're talking to people who don't even read their codex half the time.
Yeah,
I think it was Brad one time at a tournament. I was playing White Scars. He's like, Tom, why don't you use this stratagem? And I was like, what stratagem? He's like, the one that you do this. I'm like, oh, it can do that. He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
It's one of your best stratagems.
They can advance and charge as their trait. That's all I want. It's like, they have a plethora of other things you can use. And I'm like, damn it, Tom, read your codex. I'm like, I just want advance in charge. That's all I care about.
Just like, this has so many strats. You're like, eh.
And RTFB is one of my favorite things to tell people, and if you don't know what that means, it's read the fucking book.
It is a good.
It's huge on that. I mean, terrain is so big. You got to figure, before I go to an event, what army I design is based on the terrain right now, because they're so much different. You go to GW, okay, well, I'm probably going to take a more melee centric, because you can hide so many things, especially in type 2. You go to player placed, it opens up a little bit. If I'm going to something that's running either WTC terrain, depending on it, or you're going to, hell, if you're going to UKTC, you're definitely not bringing something you need to hide, because you'll get pew-pewed off the board.
Yeah, I actually had this conversation with someone earlier. We were talking about Thousand Suns, and we were talking about, WCT TC terrain, and they were like, you don't play duplicity in WTC. You play like mutation in WTC terrain, because your teleporting isn't going to do anything because of how dense the table is. Like, they're just going to put units behind walls, and you're not going to be able to see them. But mutation allows them to not just be able to get a staging point in the middle of the table. You can basically just shut down a unit every turn that's going to cause your opponent to have a problem, early on in the game. So it's just, you gotta, I think we said this when we talked about player-based terrain, but like, it's very important to understand what type of event you're going to, and your list has to reflect that.
I want to go to Animal because guys, what do you guys think of an event where every table is identical? To balance things, I designed a set that is on every table in my shop, which folks love, but every table is identical. Would you find that boring or better? Now, the Atlanta Pro tournament did that, and GW effectively does that, but they have slight differences on that. I think that if you're looking for a hyper competitive event, you get terrain that's all the same, completely fine. If I'm just going to an event, and as someone that goes to a decent amount of events, I like to see different terrain. It really depends on what the environment is. If I'm going to Du Bois, I'm expecting to have different things, different tables and things of that nature. Maybe if I'm going to the finals of GW, because GW is a standard event or standard terrain. But it depends what the tournaments it's going after. Are you going for this is a hyper competitive generalmanship tournament, or are you going for, I like to play? Or are you going for something in between, which it can be. So I wouldn't find it boring. I'd find it boring if go ahead.
Have standardized terrain and have the terrain be different. I mean, Death or Glory does a pretty decent job of that with their stuff, where, they're all a GW-esque layout, but there's different heights, different levels to each spot. There's different densities to the terrain itself. And that lends to a little bit of differential while still being very similar.
Well, we just ordered the new sets for MCM, because we order about 30 to 40 new tables from makers every year. And I specifically gave him slightly different dimensions. And he's like, you don't want the same as last year? I was like, no, like every year when we order our tables, we want them to be slightly different. That way there's a huge variety of different tables. So they're all going to be like the same on like the plexiglass. But no matter which table you go to, you're hoping to get at least a little bit of a different experience.
I mean, there also is, when you say like identical tables, right? Well, identical tables has a similar effect to what we talk about when we talk about player-based terrain, in that the people that do their homework are going to perform better than the people who don't do their homework. Yeah. That's why I don't want it to be uniform, but I want it to be I don't want it to be identical. I want it to be uniform, because you want it to be a little bit different in the fact where people have to adapt their strategies, but not the same where the guy who spent 20 hours at home deploying his army, doing every movement and, every mission and every type of game is going to have a leg up against him.
I run an event, and TJ, you played at it.
Every year.
CGT. I have 100% the exact same tables at that event.
Yep.
Right. There are 40 tables, 100% exactly the same terrain. The terrain looks the same on every table. And it creates a hyper competitive, this is what it is, these are what the layouts are event. And then I run the boys GT, which is the exact opposite, where there might be one or two tables that are pretty close to each other, but almost every table is laid out differently. They
Yeah.
may have similar terrain on some of them, but the layout's different. It's just I've done it all. I've ran on every different aspect of it. I've worked at Adepticon, I've worked LVO, I've worked Frontline, I've done the WTC event style event, and they all have their merits and their base. I like going to the variety of different ones on a personal player level. As a TO, it's tough to keep things interesting when every piece of terrain is the same. But at the same time, I hear zero complaints from people going, "Oh, the terrain fucked me."
Right.
So-
Well, speaking about terrain, let's talk about our next event. Let's talk about.
Hold on one second. I want to make one comment about the terrain, and then we have a good question that we should get into. The one question I want, or one thing I want to make is, I agree with a lot of statements you guys said, and this is kind of towards Anna and a few people who like talking about like they don't want to get beat by a terrain. When you have an event that's completely standardized and every table same, kind of like what TJ said a minute ago, you cause a reverse issue to where people can measure it and find out which armies excel at that and really abuse the system. So that's why we try to stay away from standard for every table. We try to make a little bit of differences, but like it's not a bad thing. It's just you have the reverse problem. But the question we have real quick is from Andy, who watches our show every week, says, "Well, I don't want to leave him behind." We try to engage everyone, especially those that support us. Going back to NIDS, what do you think will be a good way to defeat Kraken NIDS, or their weaknesses, given that we will see a lot of copycats after John's win at Warzone Atlanta? And it's not just John's win at Warzone Atlanta. He did really well with them at Chicago. Brad, what did you play at Triple C? Was it Kraken or no?
I played Behemoth. But it was very serious to very similar, to the John list. The first, I mean, the things that are good in NIDS are just good in NIDS. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what fleet you're playing on that. One of the biggest things, though, is that army has to close the distance to do damage. Anything that's long range is probably not super viable. Not viable, but just not the optimum. So you can play the range game versus them. It also depends on what terrain we're talking about.
They're also going to struggle against guard. I mean, I don't want to hang out on my backfield, and there aren't a lot of things that can just hang out back there and not get shelled to death.
Well, especially player placement,
armor and stuff.
If your opponent sets up a zone that you have to go through, especially if you have a very gun heavy army, they still have to cross that area. So if you're talking about like LVO, for instance, you can literally set your terrain all the way at the back of your objectives and make it so they have to be in the open for at least a turn on that, and you can really punish them for that, because most of their effective guns are going to be 24-inch guns, 18-inch smites. But if they're doing their damage and smites, they have to actually move up so they're now in your range. You always want to make it so it's anybody's army, to be honest. You have to make it so if they can get in range to hit you and do damage, that you have to be able to put them in a position where you can counterpunch. If somebody's shooting you from max range, you've done something wrong, you know what I mean, at some point in time with your movement, because they're just going to be able to go, no.
Yep. Hey, one of the things that I can always say to counter, one of the things that people don't see when they try to counter NIDS as a Tyranid player, when setting up your ruins, a lot of times you have your point facing forward. So you're deploying behind in this section here. One of the best things to do against Tyranids is flip that over, deploy back here. So they have to come to you. You can jump out from behind the wall and shoot them. Something that to put out there for just a little piece of advice to try and help out. Yeah,
like we look at, I only watched one game for Warzone Atlanta. That's when Brett was on against John. And the play against Kraken, first off, Tyranids don't have the greatest secondary choices. Yeah. So you definitely want to have a strong secondary game against them, and understanding like their threat range and how to interact. So and not allowing them to use terrain to their advantage. So make sure that, one, if you're playing a game that, like, if you have the firepower and the speed, they're not a hard army to deal with. So you just kind of make sure you never allow yourself to get pushed too far out where you're not scoring secondaries or primary. Try to stick in the game and find the turn you're going to hit them on. So at one point, Kraken has to engage you. If it doesn't and you have firepower, you're just going to crumble it, because then, unlike Leviathan builds, it doesn't have the durability. And you kind of want to try to bait them to either use their invuln, what do you guys call that? Your guys' You get to pick them every turn. What is that called, guys?
The synaptic
Imperative.
impairment.
Yeah,
Is
imperatives.
imperative. Yeah, you want to try to make them forced to do that invuln, and if they don't, which is they either get 4 up or 5 up.
Because they're all once a game.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
if
that's
you-
the big stuff, right? I mean, like secondaries are bad. That's an easy counter. You know, they need to get into melee. Their shooting's not amazing. That's another really good counter. Obviously, Kraken has great movement, but for some of the units, the rest of the units aren't particularly wanting to get up and do things. So if you can disrupt their objective scorers, well, now they're forced to then use their objective scorers to do
And
Raveners.
And Kraken
stuff.
has his nice extension. They have the movement, which is great, but they don't have any access to lurk, which really limits what their adaptives are. You know what I mean? So they have no defensive buffs either.
Yeah, I mean, they have a couple things.
They're pure offensive, so if you can try to get them in the spot where you can hit them, they just crumble. And like I said, I watched Breton's game, and nothing against my boy Breton. He did really good, great showing, even better sport. It was an absolute pleasure to watch him play because he plays with such passion for the fact that he wants both people on the table to enjoy the game, not just himself, which is pretty cool to see. It's a very rare trait. But when you watch that game, Breton, he put 2 ruins in the middle of the table that was used against him in a way, and he allowed himself to get pushed on the outset for too long. You can't do that. You can't let yourself get pushed out. You got to just kind of like put yourself to where they're gonna make okay. If you roll like a 4 or 5 on advance, you're gonna need like a 10 or 11 inch charge to get here. You know, like make them try to commit on like really long charges. Give yourself a slight average on the advance roll and slight average above average. Above average on assault or advance roll and charge, and make them take that long charge and try to commit. And if they fail, you're going to do good. If they make it, probably going to hurt a little bit, but try to make them blink first and then crumble. Is what I do.
Advice: pew pew punch punch.
Yeah,
That's some of the best advice. But yeah, so now that we have talked about one Tyranid domination, let us talk about domination number 2. And of course, this one is near and dear to our hearts because some old man stumbled in from the parking lot with a bottle of wine in his hand and won the event.
I have to give props. I need to show this. I don't know what my camera angle has to be to show this because Gil gave
I don't know
out.
that I want to see this.
Dude, no, they're just fantastic trophies. Like he gave out this plaque that's awesome, and then I literally
that's pretty sweet. Actually.
He gave out gold-plated dice, man.
Yeah, dude. I have one of those.
It's somebody that's won like a lot of random stuff. Like things like this are just fantastic to get because this is something that I'd like to display. I've got a lot of random trophies and whatnot, but that's like really cool artwork. And I just encourage.
That's the coolest one right there.
Yeah.
The actual glass is real nice.
It's just really cool. It's just I love those type of things because it's something different. I'd like to put it up. It was just a nice artistic piece that I wouldn't mind just having up at the house. You know what I mean? So I encourage TOs to get cool stuff.
Stuff is cool.
All of the things, some of the stuff.
So give us a breakdown of the event, Brad.
Yeah, tell us what's up.
It was GW style terrain. That's it. That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say about the word Vietnam.
I'm just joking. Thank you so much, Brad, for your time.
This reminds me of an interview I seen before. What is your strategy? I just try to roll more 4-ups than the opponent.
Exactly.
No. Like, what did you do? That's literally my strategy.
Surely there must be something that you do different. Shout outs to Mr. Wingfield. Surely you must do something. No, dude, I just roll 4-ups and hope that my opponent rolls less than I do.
Stop myself. As I'm cracking myself up. It was GW train, but they had a twist because they took those 2 pieces that would be type 2 and they turned them so that you had better corridors of shooting. So you could actually get longer lines of shooting, which did make a huge difference in how you approach the game because you couldn't just park behind those 2 middle ruins. If you sat on that middle objective, you were just getting shot because it was completely open from one player to the other. And we played multiples of 5 objective missions where we had, I think we just played the one Jesus Christ Salvage where we had one six objective game, but the rest were 5 objectives where you had that middle objective in the open. And I really thought just turning the terrain actually made a big difference in how it played. Because it didn't feel like because in normal GW terrain, you can basically toe touch behind either one of those pieces and still touch that objective. So your opponent has to come out and do something about it. But the way they had him turn, because they were side by side, you could just pummel whatever basically got on the middle was just getting shot, because it was the entire objective was in the open. So I thought that was a nice change. I actually liked it quite a bit. It made the GW terrain feel much more dynamic. So I didn't even think about that. You know what I mean? When you're thinking about how to fix a GW terrain set, just that turn actually made a big difference. As we played over it, at first I was like, oh man, this is going to make, too long of shooting lanes. But I actually liked it because it made you look at and do different things on the board than you're normal to see. So, but it was 5-run event besides that, and that was the thing on that. Used Tyranids, underpowered army, really going off meta with this one. I mean, I was Behemoth at least. Come on. I got a little bit of difference.
He fought hard. He fought very hard, and it was stacked against the whole time.
And here's the thing:
really
I took some super underpowered units. 2 units of Zoes. No one's ever used them before. I used Warriors.
Can you spell that for me, by the way? I'm just so that I can tell other people.
Raveners.
Are they Forge World models, Brad?
Yeah, exactly. Raveners, probably never heard of those either. I think I'm the first person to use them. I'm really breaking ground here. I don't know if you guys know, they're pretty good. Also, I went and thanks to Scott, I'm getting cardiology advice while I'm playing my last game. I won the game based on making a metric ton of spore mines versus sisters. And I'm just throwing these spores at him. And I don't know if you guys know this, sisters with 1 wound, not super excited to have a bunch of spores blow up on them.
Are you sure?
Yeah, he was not super. I also got a unit of 7 in and did 11 mortal wounds to a unit of Repentia, and he was like, well, fuck. It's just like, yep. So, and they're free, and that's one of the things that, while I'm going to abuse the shit out of them, we've had nothing in these last 2. I mean, we're in 9th, but let's be honest. No, we're in 8.5. But since we've had 8, we have nothing besides, I think, the Turvagon that gave you a free unit. You know what I mean? Yep. And the fact that spore mines don't cost anything and you can just keep dumping them out there is a big deal, because other armies don't get reinforcements. You can maybe heal a guy, get a guy back kind of thing with a few armies, but like actually just creating units is something that no one else can do right now.
Yeah. Did you notice that people just forgot to shoot spore mines?
Oh, especially if you summon them, the spore assist, you just go 18 inches up and behind one of the middle pieces of terrain there, and then just they kind of walk up slowly, and you're like, oh no, is that 3 sets of 6 walking at me? Yeah.
So where do you rank spores and the units that need to be nerfed right now? Do you think they're balanced or a little too good?
I think that they have to. I think that they could actually be nerfed a bit on the fact that you can't place a model on spore mines, so you can actually move block with them, even though they don't count for anything. You can deep strike next to them and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But you still can't put your model on them. I think that they also should have to just explode, and then they move them, so you can't move block somebody. So just measure up, go, hey, they blow up, figure out what happens. That would actually help quite a bit, because you can do a huge amount of move blocking, especially on tanks, knights, and things of that nature, because you just put them where it just blocks the back end of their base, and then they have to basically lose 6 to 7 inches of movement because they can't clear that base. So if they could, that would actually help a lot with spore mines. I don't know 100% if they need to be nerfed, but I definitely need that. I think that you should have to say, I move here, they auto explode, and then I just kind of finish my movement.
Yeah, I also think it's kind of weird that there's a potential to do a lot of damage for some cheap units with them.
Yeah.
I think they need to, the 5/6 roll needs to just be on a 6.
Yeah, the 5 and 6 is that is true. Yeah. Them blowing up on a 5 and a 6 is huge.
Yeah, big
They
mortal
will
wounds
do
is
2
bad.
through 4 for 1, right?
Yeah, 2 through 4 for
Yeah.
one, but 5 and 6 is just D3. And
D3.
if you get a lucky roll where you get 8 or 9 from the Biovores, and they aren't able to take care of them right away, and you just because they move forward, but you can advance, and you just get in, and you all of a sudden you just go, oh, cool, I rolled 6 or 7, 5 5 pluses. That's all D3 mortals, and that's huge on a unit that costs 0.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
I think they're going to be
I love
adjusted.
this. Tell Brad to move
I
his
think
own damn.
Biowars will probably go up a little bit in points to help with that. I don't think they're going to touch the Sporocyst.
I'd like to see Raveners go up.
I like
think they're
DJ
very
calling
strong.
me out of this. He goes, tell Brad to move his own damn swarm. It's bad enough the Biovars toss them, and this old man is physically tossing the models. Just put them somewhere over there, which what I was literally doing, chucking spore mines at him from across the table. 6 inches away from your shit. Pause. What do you mean? Just be really annoying. Put them 6 inches across.
The person, whoever Brad borrowed his armor from, is watching this, the show's like, damn it, he's talking about throwing my models again. Brad don't care. Drunk Brad don't care. He's like, these ain't my models.
Hey, man, I just want you to know I've been playing sober. And this game's not as fun sober, but it's so much easier. Man, it's ridiculous.
I learned that the last couple
This
of them.
game's
I'm like,
ridiculously. I was like, man, if you're sober, your plays like this game's so much easier to play. I told Sam, I go, I'm unstoppable sober. This is lame, but man, it's so easy.
So, based on, obviously, we got Tyranids. They're doing very well. What other armies did everybody seem to see, or Brad, in your case, what did you see over the weekend that you thought was surprising to be at the top or not surprising to be at the top?
Thousand Suns with Flamers, I think, are arguably at the top right now, and they should just enjoy their time at the top.
Oh yeah, because we're gonna get.
Oh, they are getting an RKO out of nowhere.
Yeah. It's not out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
I mean, when
you know,
GW
never
just
like
goes, Zinch.
yeah, it's gonna be like the show Intervention, when you go into the room and you're like, yeah, man, I can't wait to hang out, and then the light turns on and you're like, oh fuck, okay, well, hi. Like they're gonna get obliterated.
Yeah.
Like
just
out of the think of a nerf and they're going to hit it. They're going to get a points increase. They're going to get a squad decrease, a squad size decrease. They're going to get probably a shot count decrease, or maybe even a strength decrease. It's going to be rough.
I'm super worried about this because they do this too often. They see armies that are taking Flamers being propped up by the Flamers. And I feel sorry for Mr. TJ because he knows Thousand Suns. If Thousand Suns lose the Flamers and they nerf Thousand Suns, the army becomes bad.
We literally can't take any nerfs for that army to be functional. What are you going to nerf? You're going to make Terminators more expensive? They're already arguably too expensive for what they do. You're going to make Rubrics expensive? I already didn't want to take Rubrics. Fuck. Okay, cool.
Dude, yeah, that's what they're doing. All right, it's set in stone. 1 unit of Rubrica or Scarabs per unit of Zangors.
Great. I totally, someone else was like, they're going to not touch them. Don't worry about it. I'm like, it's Games Workshop. You just don't know. You think you know, but you don't. They could just be like, at the last minute, they could be like, all right, but clearly Thousand Suns are doing well. Let's change their secondaries or something like that. Like, all right, cool. I didn't want to play with this army either.
I don't really get it, because the last time, Demons got a new book, Flamers were just absolutely broken, and it was like,
a new book? You mean the last edition?
it was like 6th edition I'm talking about. Maybe it was there one before 6th? I don't know.
Dude, that was so
their
long
8th edition
ago.
book was
You're also
bad.
talking. It wasn't even the book. Flamers were amazing in that little.
because they had a white dwarf.
No, that pamphlet. It wasn't even a white dwarf. It was that little pamphlet they gave out. It was
Right.
Flamers and Screamers for a little while. Were just ridiculous. They went, hey, how about 3 to 4 months you buy all these models, and they were also metal back then. Like, we would like to get rid of these metal models.
Back then. I remember they were selling the crappy resin. All right, we got a couple things people want us to bring up here. First off, Lyle wants me to discuss a list he sent me today that went 5-1 over the weekend.
Okay.
It was like 11 Lehman Russes and 2 squads of mortars, and that was it.
Okay.
Harman and Company.
Yep. And it had where the vehicles count as 5 models. So Lyle wants our opinion on that list.
So have only talked about guard for the last 2 episodes, how they were going to be busted as fuck, and it just so happens that they're
pretty
busted
good.
as fuck.
I don't even think that that's the best type of list, to be honest.
No,
I
but
don't.
But
That list, in my opinion, that list loses to armies that are very tactical.
right,
Like,
it's a gatekeeper army, to be honest.
but that's the perfect example when we talk about busted armies, right? The fact that you can literally look at the list and go, "That's not even the worst."
Yeah,
And
not
it's
even close.
Still doing really well. Like,
If you can see somebody, they're just fucking dead though. 11 fucking leaving Russes go, hey, look at that dude. You're like, magic trick gone.
I mean, the thing I can say is the way Games Workshop currently is looking at that book is something that I wanted to talk about anyways, so I'm going to cover it here. To go, Mike Brandt, who is the head of match play right now for Games Workshop, has gone, the Guard Codex isn't legal until it gets its full release.
who?
Mike Brandt?
It's
Yeah.
final version, power level 10,000.
So, and I think part of that is because when that book hits, they're going to get the balance update. And that balance update, from some things that I've heard through a pipeline, is a lot of those things that guards are getting as benefits, like Armor of Contempt and the indirect fire nerf, ignore, are just going away. So I think we got to look at guard currently in the, until all that happens, let's wait and put it a holding pattern. Still, I think the 11 Lehman Russes and Mortars are going to be good. You're going to be able to pilot them to 5-1 in a lot of events, 4-1 in a lot of events. But there's going to be better lists that come out of that book.
yeah, I agree. And we have another question for you guys.
All right.
Gary wants us to discuss what strong/top performing army right now do we think stands the best to survive nerfs?
Tyranids.
Nerfs, you said?
Tyranids have already went through 3 rounds
Yeah,
of nerfs.
Tyranids cannot get nerfed any further, or the entire fan base will French Revolution that bitch. They'll be all over that shit.
Because the thing is that it's a very hard line to run, because, for instance, let's talk about Custodes. We've talked about this before, where Custodes were basically being carried by Tau. Tau took care of all of their bad matchups, because this is before the indirect nerf and you had the air bursting with the extra AP and everything else. All the armies that were good against Custodes didn't get played. And then after you nerfed Tau, all those armies came back and they nerfed Custodes a little too hard. And now Custodes' win rate went down and they're significantly harder to play. I think they nerfed them too hard. And I think that they do that a lot because when you have to look at nerfs, you have to go, how is the meta looking when we're going to nerf this? You know what I mean? How does it change? And to be fair, it's very hard to look at though, because you've got shit tons of factions all working together. You change one thing, it lets other armies play in. Do those armies now hurt that army that was dominating before? And the thing is, it's going to be hard to do nerfs right now because we literally go in Votann Guard back to back, 2 very oppressive armies with guns. We have to see how that changes a lot of what's standing there.
We've also got World Eaters coming. Like, there's some books that are definitely going to shake things up, especially when you have a Primarch that may or may not be coming back from the dead, probably once a game.
Or more.
Well, once a game at least. So, I mean, like you said, I don't think that Nids are going to get nerfed, and Tau, which is so hilarious, and I cannot stand it, but there's nothing I can do about it. But, like, every fucking time they release one of their meta watch, they're like, and Tau is 50% just like we had planned. Like, bro, you don't know. Like, you clearly are this is the issue when you just use data, just raw data. You're not talking to tournament players. You're not talking about you're not looking at events results. You're looking at Jimmy down the street playing his Tau and then Ogden playing his Tau. Jimmy down the street goes 1-5. Ogden goes 6-0.
And Ogden goes 2-4.
2-4, baby.
So, I mean, it's very frustrating to
Sometimes
hear stuff like that. Where they're like, oh man, like that book is so balanced. And you're like, that book is not balanced at all.
The thing is about Tau is it's also at that breaking point. You nerf it anymore and it's just dead.
Crew Talks Riders.
How is the bombers?
Yes.
Yeah, the bomber, their
That's
bombers
the
are
only thing
way
I
too
think
cheap.
needs a-
You know why? Because flyers can go to hell.
Listen,
Absolutely.
Listen, you take the bombers away, and it's still just over, because they provide an element that they need when they lost. You look at the list we have now compared to the list we had almost a year ago, and there's 10 less crisis suits and 3 less broadsides and 20 less crews. Like, they have literally made it bare bones, and it's
Tom's looking at it going, the list I brought earlier in the year, man, that list only had me play 15 minutes. Now my games went to 23 minutes, and that's just not, that's ridiculous.
The other funny part about what you're saying is, like, you're telling me that if you lose one unit, your list is dead. What does that mean? Does that mean you're going to go from 5-1 to, 6-0 to 5-1? Is that what you mean? Because
Brendan's got points on this. They could change a lot of things, and I'm not even going to say just Tau. They could do it in a lot of codexes by making things 0-1s. You know what I mean? If you've got a problem thing, don't fucking nerf it into unplayableness. Make it an 0-1.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that those
look at the work buggies. If they wouldn't have gotten rid of the indirect, if they would have left indirect the way it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they just 0-1 to the buggies, did that solve the problem?
Yeah.
Right? It probably did, because now you're not dealing about 9 oppressive things with indirect fire.
Right. And the thing
with both, it was a little too much, and that army completely changed. It's still a viable army, but it completely changed.
Yeah,
I think if
Battlesuit 0-1, it would have killed the codex, in my opinion.
And with what?
If they make what 0-1?
The Crisis Battlesuit, like the Battlesuit's talking about, Battlesuit
I think
0-1.
the crisis suits can go to 0-1. I think flyers need to go to 0-1 on a personal level.
I think flyers need to go to a 0-0.
Sure. So
It flyers so much.
So Elise was saying that I was talking about flamers and basically saying that they're the same thing as bombers. It is definitely different because I am not winning every event I go to, unlike Tom and other people who play the codex. It just brings
bro. Just like GW says, get good.
Level.
Yo, bro, I didn't win the last event I went to. What are you talking about?
Sure, but you've definitely won more events than I can think of any Thousand Suns player with the addition of flamers in the army. So, and I'm not, I want flamers to be fixed. I do not want it to just be this crazy nonsense. I'm saying the same thing about flyers. Like, I want flamers to be nerfed. I want your flyers to be nerfed. Is it going to break the back of those models? Are they going to be unplayable? Hell yeah. That's just what it is.
To be fair, I've lost 2 events this season.
Ah.
Look, man,
Yes.
all I'm saying is, just like Space Marines with GW, just get good. Don't fix it, just get better.
You know, that's the thing. Like, GW told us, Space Marines, just you gotta be better with them. They're perfectly balanced, fine army right now. Just
Look,
be better.
TJ, when Terminators go up 7 points and Flamers go up 103 points,
I'm okay.
you'll be fine.
Well, what we were talking about earlier, what we said is the Codex is at a breaking point where if you nerf anything in the Thousand Suns book, get rid of the Flamers. That's okay. I'll go back to playing Mono T-Suns. That will be fine as long as you don't touch the rest of the Codex.
Yeah.
Because it is at a breaking point where if I get some point increases on my T-Suns, now they are unplayable.
I mean, we know that the points right now are going to stay the way they are until LVO, right?
Sure, of course.
There may be, I mean, for tournament style play, they may change like the weekend before LVO, but LVO is going to be the end all be all of that, of the Nephilim, of the current points. When everything comes out, there's going to be points that are going to get lowered. You know, Space Marines are going to get some points lowered. You know, Flamers are either going to go up in points or get a nerf to the Flamer or both. I would assume the Bomber's probably going to go up between 10 and 15 points for Tau. But you're going to see other things drop in points, which may make them more playable. We've got to hold off a little bit because I have a feeling they're going to do a nice overhaul. In my hopes, in my head,
I think they're going to make
an overhaul. Because we say this every time, right? Like we talk about this every time.
Yeah.
Like we're like, oh man, they're definitely gonna have some points increases, and they're totally gonna decrease some stuff. And then Games Workshop is like, what if we didn't?
Yeah.
We did like 2 units get a points decrease, and that was it. And speaking about points and about things that will affect the meta, let us talk about Big Papa Angron, Mr. Lord of the Red Sands himself.
I'm bringing him because that dude's badass.
So we saw over the weekend, for anyone who didn't know, who didn't see, they showed us his stat line. So Brad, obviously
39 attacks, scrubs.
Yeah.
Good.
So what do you think about Mr. 39 attacks? What's your opinion? We're gonna go around.
I think that it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna play him, and he's going to get shot turn 1 in half of his games, and he's never gonna get there. You're gonna res him, he's gonna yell a lot, and then you're gonna bury him one more time. But when he does hit something, he's going to be such a weird dichotomy, because you're going to have games when he sucks a huge bag of dicks. And then there's going to be games when it feels like he was just an unstoppable force. He's got a ridiculous upside, but he's T7, man. And he can't, with 18 wounds, he can't be hit.
He does have a 2+ save. And if he keeps armor contempt, that is a big plus for the big boy.
If he keeps armor contempt.
I just want to pause for a quick second, because Robert Toole just posted in here. For everyone knows, he's one of my best friends. He got me into 40K. He turned me into the monster I am. And I've never seen him in our channel before. I just want to tell him what's up. And welcome to the channel, Robert. And I'm so sorry for doing that, but I had to do that. Couldn't control my excitement for seeing him in our chat.
No worries, man. So, Brian, what do you think? Brad's going to take him because, Brad likes big monsters that go roar. But
it's also my first army, World Eaters.
Yeah. I also think seeing an MSU Chaos Army is going to be really interesting. That's aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think it's gonna make for a very interesting build. It's gonna counter some stuff in the meta. And with Armor of Contempt, if it's still floating around, it's going to be kind of fun. It's going to make for very interesting games.
He moves 16, man. So there's going to be games when he goes first, but board corners, when you just sit him right on the edge of your deployment and go, this is a pretty big roll right here, because he's about to YOLO Swaggins into your backfield if I go first.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention something that you both haven't said yet, which is points cost. The man is rumored to be 350 points. 350 points for a bullet sponge on your first turn and maybe your fourth turn. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, because you can res him. We haven't talked about that. If you get enough points, the rage points, whatever the hell they are, you're going to be able to get him back. So,
yeah,
I mean, I would bring him.
Way to automatically have enough points in the game to do it.
Weirdly enough, it's going to be based on your army. I think that Brian's onto some on the thing with an MSU army, because you're going to have enough army to play the game also and be aggressive and then get him back to main something. Because if you don't have enough of everything in that army, you're just going to go, oh, I went second, he's dead, and the rest of my army gets pieced out also.
I mean, he is a stat check army, right? I mean, it's like running a knight around the table that gets back up. Like, we have that problem now, too, so...
For somebody who's in the middle of retail season now and doesn't get the chance to read too much hobby stuff, how many points is Angron?
350.
Rumored to be 350.
Yeah, rumored to be 350.
Same points as Bobby G. Can someone explain this?
By the way, he would pick up Bobby G and face fucking
in a heartbeat.
Just he would literally hold his head like he's having the little brother fight while he's fighting other shit.
So yeah, I mean, for everyone who hasn't seen it yet, he has 39 attacks, but they're -3.
Yeah, but also he could just swing his regular, because he's got a sweep attack that's ×3, but he can just get the 13 and just do 3 plus D3 per on the other ones, so he could just go up to big shit and go night.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting. I think, like you said,
big night and go, see ya, bye.
Yeah.
So Tom, what do you think about playing him across the table with your Tau army?
If I go second, I'm gonna redeploy away from him and just shoot him as he tries to move forward to me. So he doesn't have a wound cap, right?
No, but the model does move 16 inches.
All right, so I'm gonna go 28 inches away from you.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, you have a turn to kill that man.
Oh, I'll do it. I once had someone tell me that I could, and Brad saw that term. He's like, so this is my tournament unit. It's got -1 to wound, feel no pain, trans hitman, all stuff. Right when the Chaos Codex was brand new, like, don't worry, Tom, you can't kill it. You can't kill it, Tom. Don't even try. No one's gonna kill more than 3 in a turn. I was like, no, I'm gonna kill it for turn 1. You put it in the open, I'm killing it. So
Also,
put it right in the center of the
totally
board.
not even the right move. Tom could have killed the rest of his army. Instead, he basically was eye fucking me while he's killing this unit just to prove me wrong.
Yeah, and then after I killed the Termies, I was like, all right, now long strike's gonna shoot, and killed the demon prince that it was protecting. I was like, man, this sucks. I still have a whole nother crisis squad. I don't know what to shoot now.
Yeah, I mean, like I
First
said,
world problems, maybe.
I honestly think that he is going to completely change the meta, especially based on that strat for that ability for him to get back up. And then something else that, as the resident Chaos player, a lot of people aren't saying yet is you can ally with Khorne demons. So now you've got a wound cap bloodthirster because you're gonna take a wound cap bloodthirster. So now you got 2 big boys running across the table frolicking.
Nope. And you've got Scarbread dropping in like a crazy person. I'm gonna hold everybody in combat.
I don't think you can do
Playing the missions is stupid.
You can't do You can't do all of them because it's too much power for your allies, unless the secondaries and your abilities just suck. But I can't imagine that's the case. But what I will say is, the rumor is that Angeron gets to pick an ability every turn, and one of the abilities is no one gets to fall back within 6 inches of him, just no matter what.
So one thing that you forgot to realize, CJ, you said, how am I gonna kill this guy with my Tau? When this book comes out, as you can see with my boys right here, I'm gonna be playing with the guard.
I mean, I said Tau, so I don't like guard. Yeah, that's a different beast that I don't even want to talk about. I heard
Fuck
that
guard.
if you run
Seriously, fuck guard.
if you run 3 Dreadclaw drop pods, you have yourself a pretty good weekend. Any
Listen, your wound cap bloodthirster is gonna drop in. I'm gonna have one guardsman holding a banner. He's like, "Fuck your wound cap! This banner says we ignore it."
I love that it's a banner too. You just get inspired. The finial. So dumb.
it's gonna be
Bullets are amazing.
It's going to be pretty interesting. Like I said, I honestly am very excited for him. Plus, around that time period is when we're going to get new missions, and these missions are going to be hopefully more oriented at what I think they try to do every edition, and they often every book rules, and they often fail, which is engagement on objectives. They always try.
But they did it. It's so much better now than it was, man. I mean, you've got
100%.
You've got 2 armies that are on interactive, but like literally everyone used to just go to the last, stand here, stranglehold, nothing.
Well, that's secondary changes, right? But not primary changes.
I hope when we get these books, we get new points, and they finally fix Marines. And if he's 350 points, I hope Bobby G's like 125 points, apparently. Or we get some new rules added to him.
Gonna nerf him.
I mean, if they take him down to, like, I don't know, 225, he's probably playable.
Oh, man. So you're going to tell me I can choose between Angron for 350 and Bobby G from 225? I'll still pass.
Walking with some of the flies. Bobby G's like, come fight me. I will after I'm done killing everyone you love.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I'm very excited to see what he ends up bringing to the table, because he is one of, I mean, he's a Primarch, right? He's one of my favorites.
He's an iconic character.
He's a very iconic character. If you want my honest opinion, I wanted Fulgrim, but not everybody can get their peacock, up in this bitch. So we'll just have to deal with what we got to deal with.
So we have a good question that we're going to take because we are technically over time already. That's fun.
We started late.
Andy, first off, Andy, I will check out those leaks. Send me a message and I'll look at them. But Anna, longtime supporter of DOG, great captain of our sister team, Valkyrie Gaming, asked us a question. Speaking of new things and killing fields, what do you guys think of the GW Type 3 for not having obscuring in the center? And should that layout be used on 5 objective missions to put one in the center?
I haven't played games on it yet because I haven't been to a tournament with it. I've seen it but I haven't. I actually kind of like it because it's just different for one.
Mm-hmm.
So I had 3 tables set up at Du Bois with that style of layout, and most people seemed okay with it. I've played 3 games now on it, all 3 with 5 objective games, and it worked really well because it made that center objective not get held every turn. It was very intriguing. It caused for some interesting exchanges. Put it that way.
I like that. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know,
And it is dense, so it has that going for it. So it's. Yeah.
I personally like it. I haven't played on it yet. The reason why I like it because it gives us a 3rd different layout. So between the 3 layouts I have, I think you get a pretty good variety of different deployments and train setups. So I feel like there's not one single type of army that can go to an event and win it just by steamrolling it through the terrain. So I like it.
Oh yeah. So 2 things before we go. First things first. I forgot they talked about. Apparently, there is a rumor that Bobby G is getting a brand new data sheet that gives him more attacks, but he loses his mortal wound his mortal wound ability, which is really unfortunate for Big Boy. He gets more attacks but less damage overall because mortal wounds are not good. But the second thing I wanted to do is congratulate Mr. Brad Chester, who has been announced as a team captain.
Yep.
For Team America.
Team America.
And what's Team America? Can someone explain it to me?
Well, we are guys that go and play Pog and Rocket. So, national team for 40K competing in the World Team Championships, an 8-man death match overseas.
Yeah, that's why we have to get a new team every year because people just die. It's really unfortunate. That's why Brad didn't actually.
Especially if they do it in Serbia, right, Brad?
Andy, he is the captain who he has decided to take on a coaching role because it's hard for Brad to play that many days in a row and try to stay sober. So Brad has put himself into the coach role, but he is the captain. If he chose to, he could play. You never know how things go.
I don't
Brad
think it's the drinking thing. I honestly think that as a captain that you should not play because of how much responsibility is required.
There's just a lot going on, man.
Yeah, especially in a country like ours, right? Like if we were in Germany or other countries in Europe where they go on holiday for a month at a time, and you could just practice with your team, that would be different. We have 15 days, or if you're lucky, you have 15 days for your whole year of vacation days with sick included in there. So we don't really have the luxury that a lot of these other countries have as far as our PTO and our vacation policies. So it is, I think it's a very demanding role. And I think that Brad took the correct response and said, hey, I'm not going to play this year. I think there's just too much going on. So, and it's new, right? Maybe next year when Brad's been captain for an additional year and has played with being, has done the being captain spot for Team America, he'll come back and play once he has a template set up. But for now, I think that is the correct.
I don't know though, because I feel like I did the correct one, because there's also at the event, there's so much going on to try to keep track of, every game and where you are and notifying your players where they should be and everything else that I really want to be involved in that also.
Yeah, no, I like that.
And I don't know, Brad, if you saw, but you had people coming out of the woodwork to volunteer to fly over there to be your wine bitch.
Yeah.
I personally still going to put it in my brain, my headcanon, that Brad decided to do because he just wanted to drink more. And being a captain means he could walk away and just drink the entire time and not have to worry about anything. On that note, That's the show. Thanks for joining us this week.
Deuces.
We'll be back
Thanks,
next
guys. We will see you guys next week. Oh, we'll see you guys Thursday.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, check out our Patreon, which will
Yep.
be getting more stuff very shortly.
week. Absolutely.
And-
Like us. If you can all give us thumbs up and like the video,
And-
please.
7 o'clock
Yeah.
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yep.
Goodbye.